But I wanted to open this first hour with a question about corporate personhood and the corporate death penalty. The corporate death penalty used to be used a lot in the United States. In the 19th century, in the 1800s, it was not at all uncommon for a corporation that committed a crime to simply be put out of business by the state. Corporations only exist at the pleasure of the various states in which they're incorporated, and all of us. And the secretaries of state who are, oversee these corporate charters, historically, in fact, up until the 1890s, every corporation had to have a statement in its charter that said that it was incorporated to do what, to operate in a way that served the public interest. That's no longer the case. And back in 2002, I think it was, I wrote a book called Unequal Protection. And in that book, I wrote about a situation that had just happened in the last couple of years. This was 1998. And I'm going into ancient history here because in just a second, I'm going to get to a story that's happening right now, this very minute, that the New York Times is reporting on. But I just want to give you a little context. This is from Russell Mokaber's Corporate Crime Reporter, a newsletter that he used to do back then. I'm not sure if he still is, but this was 1998. The FBI estimated robberies and burglaries in the United States, okay? Robberies and burglaries at around $4 billion. And we put a lot of people in prison for that. I mean, a lot of people. We got, we have a quarter of all the people in prison in the world in a country that only has 300 and some odd million people in it when the population of the planet's 7 billion. We have more people in prison than anybody. And, a lot of them are burglars and robbers. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be going to jail, but I want to put these things in context. $4 billion a year, according to the FBI, in robberies and burglaries. But just security scams alone. In other words, right now, you can go to, let's say that your great aunt Gertrude died and left you $50,000 in a CD. And so you go to an investment counselor or an investment broker and you say, okay, I just inherited $50,000 from Aunt Gertrude and I want to know what to do with it. And they say, oh, well, you should buy this particular, stock or mutual fund. And they can say that without telling you that they know that your 50 grand is probably going to become 45 grand, but they're going to make a big fee off it. They could be telling you to invest in what is literally the worst investment for you, but which they make the highest commission on, and they have no requirement to disclose that. Now, as we speak, Democrats, the Obama administration, the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau are trying to get legislation passed and rules passed, new rules out of the CFPB that would require financial advisors to tell you the truth about what they're telling you to do with your money. And guess who's pushing back against it? The Republicans. Paul Ryan is leading the charge against this in the House. So anyhow, security scams, $15 billion a year. We get ripped off to the tune of $15 billion a year through the kind of thing that I just described to you. Keep in mind, all the robberies and burglaries in the country, $4 billion a year. Car repair fraud, $40 billion a year. And then insurance swindles and corporate fraud found on your health insurance, HMO, hospital billings, that runs between $100 and $400 billion a year. You say, this is pretty terrible stuff, but nobody died from any of that, right? We just got robbed badly by all these corporations. But people are dying. More people are killed. This, I'm now reading from my own book, right, from Unequal Protection. This is chapter 16. You can find the book online. It's in any library, of course, for free, and it's also online over at truthout.org. This is chapter 16, Unequal Responsibility for Crime. More people died as a result of corporate activity than because of the actions of deranged killers or overwrought spouses. According to the Corporate Crime Reporter, the FBI reported that 1998 saw about 19,000 Americans murdered at the hands of other people. But that same year, 56,000 people died from work-related diseases like black lung and asbestosis that went unreported by the FBI. And many times that number, so this is 56,000 people, many times 56,000, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people, died from the silent violence of pollution, contaminated food, hazardous consumer products, and hospital malpractice. In 1998, one of America's largest meatpacking companies replaced a refrigeration unit in one of its processing lines. Shortly thereafter, the detectors it had placed on the line to look for the deadly cold-loving Listeria monocytogenes bacteria, Listeria, started to react, indicating high levels of bacterial contamination. The company's response was immediate. Carolyn Smith DeWall of the Center for Science and the Public Interest told reporters Russell Mokabar and Robert Weissman, quote, when their tests started coming up positive, they stopped testing. And then the company used their Fourth Amendment right of privacy to block surprise inspections by the government. The detectors were apparently turned off for a full month before the Centers for Disease Control, frantically trying to find the source of the bacteria that was killing people, mostly children, all over the United States, used DNA fingerprinting to track the bacteria that was causing this national outbreak of Listeria back to this one plant, provoking a nationwide recall of 1 million pounds of product. During that 1 month, when they were finally nailing this stuff down, the CDC was finally nailing this stuff down, 21 humans died. But according to the U.S. Attorney's Office, there was insufficient evidence to bring a felony charge against the company. So the company paid a $200,000 fine and issued an unprecedented joint press release this was the first Bush administration in 98, with the Bush administration's USDA, that managed to say that the company had paid the fine without ever mentioning the brand name of the product that had been contaminated and caused the deaths. Excuse me, this would have been the second Bush administration by the time they figured this all out. Similarly, when Congress considered putting criminal penalties into the National Traffic and Motor Vehicle Safety Act, the auto industry lobbied hard against it and won. No criminal penalties. As a result, today, if a person working as a part-time mechanic in his backyard were to knowingly and willfully repair or build a car for somebody that killed them, he could go to prison for manslaughter or even murder. But if a corporation did it, they now have a legal exemption. So what's the story today? Dole. Stephanie Strom, and today this is the April 29th, New York Times Business Day. The Dole Food Company, one of the largest processors of fresh produce, knew it had a Listeria problem in one of its salad plants more than a year before it was closed in January, according to the FDA. It took a Freedom of Information Act filing to pry this secret out of the hands of the FDA. The plant had tested positive for Listeria 9 times before the FDA inspectors showed up in January at a plant in Springfield, Ohio. 4 people have died after becoming ill so far in the outbreak. 33 more across the U.S. and Canada become so sick they spend time in the hospital. At what point do we start issuing the corporate death penalty? Is it time to say that if a corporation causes a human being to die, that corporation has to die, break up their assets, split them up, sell them off, and let new people start?
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
If nothing else, frankly, I think this would be a stimulus to the economy, particularly with some of these giant corporations.
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.